One thing that I mentioned that is very useful with ggplot2 is that you can reuse a lot of code. So what we now want to do is to create the second plot that I mentioned in the lecture, namely this line plot that somehow used different kind of data, looked very differently, but that actually can reuse a lot of code that we have created here in order to create our first figure. So what we can do is here to read in this alternative data set again from the data science exercise package. We can have a look at that data set. It looks a little bit different than the first one. You also have the continent here, but you now have data for different years. The data is aggregated for different continents, but you have data for different years. And what we now want to do, we want to visualize the changes over time. So what we want to do here is now to reuse as much of the code that we've written for the first plot as possible. But there are some things that we obviously need to change. So above all, we need to change here the data set. And we also know already that the x-axis should map the function, the variable year that we have here, and that the y-axis should have the variable GDP per cap. This is immediately clear. Aside from the rest, there are certainly some changes necessary, but let's see how it looks like. This is the immediate output. Obviously, it's not what you want, but you already see, okay, there are many things that already look good, more or less. So one thing that is obviously irritating for this kind of plot is the size aesthetic. We don't want that. So we can basically remove that from the mapping here. Then let's again look at the plot of how it looks like. Here we now have the years, but the years are scaled as we have scaled the GDP per capita values. So this is something we don't need. We also don't need here the size. We just removed that. Here with the scale x continuous, the rescaling of the GDP per capita, we don't need that for the x-axis, but we can actually reuse it for the y-axis because GDP per capita is now mapped on the y-axis. So we can just replace x by y here, and we have the nice rescaling on the y-axis, and the x-axis now looks good. Now, what obviously doesn't fit are the labels. We have GDP per capita in international dollars. This is now on the y-axis, so we can just exchange that. For the x-axis, we could have something like year. We obviously also need to change the title, like income per capita over time. So we could have something like that, but obviously these numbers here are clearly years, so we don't really need the label for the x-axis. So what we can do is actually we can here axis title, but only for the x-axis. We can actually remove that because it's obvious that this refers to years. Now this looks actually quite nice already, but for a proper line graph, we would need something like a line. So we could add here another geom called line, obviously. We now here have the lines connecting the dots, but we also see that the lines are now all in black. This might be a little bit surprising at first place, but remember that we made this trick in using a particular shape here that has different colors and fill aesthetics, and we have not mapped here anything on the color right now, on the color aesthetic. So we would need to set color equals continent again. If we do that now, we have the lines colored again correctly. We might here, however, either remove the specific looks of the points, so we can keep it like this. We could also remove the points, but it might also be interesting to have the different years observations highlighted in here. Now you see, this actually already looks quite nice. And there were only a couple of changes actually necessary in our code. So once you have created code that works well for one figure, it's usually not too much work to have another figure that might look very, very different at first sight, but actually shares a lot of code from the original figure. And I think this is one of the beauty of ggplot2, that you can really save a lot of time. With time, you become very efficient, not only because you remember nicely the different functions, and you can actually write the code quite quickly, but also because you can reuse a lot of code. It's also helpful later if you use artificial intelligence to say, okay, hey, this is code I like this figure, but please rewrite the code such that it does this and that with this and that data. So this becomes very useful, but only if you really understand the basics of how to use ggplot, because only then you can basically take the code created by the AI and adjust it to your needs and not be irritated or confused by the code that the AI might provide to you. So that's basically it. I hope that was useful to you. And let's just have a quick summary about what we've done so far.